Hi, my name is Arthur Haines, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself. Some of you may have seen me before on videos that have been produced by my friend Daniel Vitalis, and these have been shared with the world through YouTube. The purpose of my introduction is to share with you the teaching that I do here at the Delta Institute of Natural History. And this is a natural history school that focuses on botany and primitive living skills. And the traditional sets of skills emphasize wild nutrition and healing. And without going into a long philosophical treatise today on why we should care about wild plants and how they can enhance our lives, I thought I would simply share with you a meal that I've prepared from plants that I've gathered from the landscape. And to get started, I'm going to need to build a fire so that I can cook. We are here in Maine. This is after Thanksgiving, late November. And this might seem like a particularly challenging time of year to put together a wild meal, especially when we consider that the ground is beginning to freeze and most of the wild plants have senesced, meaning they have died back to their overwintering stage, which might be seeds if we're discussing annuals, or their underground stems, tubers, rhizomes, and the like for the perennial plants. However, if we move out of the forest and into some of the open areas, we can still find a lot of the species that colonize recently disturbed habitats that we can utilize as food. The challenge this time of year is to be able to recognize all of these dead stems as well as the withered remains of partially green leaves that might be on the ground. That's where the experienced or the veteran forager has a hand up in being able to find food, including these dead stems here. Now, what we're not going to cover today is the details of the identification and how I'm recognizing these various plants, but what we're looking at here is Helianthus tuberosus, or the tuberous sunflower, often called Jerusalem artichoke. Here are a couple of the tubers from the tuberous sunflower. Though this isn't the best time of year to be eating these because they contain an indigestible starch called inulin. And in the spring, a lot of that inulin is converted to more simple sugars that our digestive tract can take care of. So this time of year, when we're eating tuberous sunflower, we need to be sure to cook them for a long time to avoid any digestive upset. Now here are the stems of common evening primrose, Enothera biennis. Now these stems tell us that evening primrose at least used to be here. The issue with this plant is that seeds usually need open mineral soil to germinate, which means that they grow in areas that have been disturbed. In other words, the soil has been moved and the mineral particles have been brought to the surface. So they can come into a site and grow, and eventually, when that site grows over with a carpet of other plants, they might not be found there anymore. Well, fortunately, this is a place where there is a lot of soil disturbance, and when I look down at the base of the stems, partially hidden under the snow, I can see the rosettes of leaves that indicate the presence of the edible taproot below. Here are a couple of the taproots that I've dug. And the great thing about unearthing this plant is even though we're performing lethal collection on these particular plants here, the tilling of the soil means that the seeds that fall from the dead stems can actually germinate and grow into new plants. In other words, when we dig these taproots, we make the site suitable, or should say keep it suitable, for this plant to continue to grow there. Another wild plant that's going to be part of today's meal is Taraxacum officinale, or the common dandelion. Now, many people are aware that the leaves and flowers of this plant are edible and that the roots can be roasted to make a beverage. But not everyone's aware that the underground part of this plant makes a perfectly acceptable root vegetable. The trick here is to know to gather the first year plants because they have the most homogeneous and best tasting roots. As these plants get older and move into their second and third year, the roots become much less desirable as a wild food. The great thing about the roots is they're rich in lecithin. This is a nutrient that has been experimentally shown to be beneficial to our livers, as well as it is a fat emulsifier, which means that our body is better able to absorb fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, when we consume this plant. And this is actually very typical of wild plants, that not only do we derive direct nutrition from these, but we also have associated benefits that go along with the consumption of these foods. Here are the taproots of common dandelion, and if you take a look at these, you'll notice that they're very pale on the exterior and quite smooth. There aren't lots of ridges and corrugations on the exterior part of the root. That tells me that I was successful in identifying the first year taproots, so I'm going to have a much better food than, again, if I were to gather the older plants. The roots of dandelion are not always that large, but they're easy to gather in abundance and quite easy to clean. Well, this is definitely one of my passions, cooking wild foods outdoors on an open hearth. But I want to make it clear to you that you don't need to cook these foods outside or be dressed in furs or do anything extreme to bring the nutritional benefits of wild foods into your life. In fact, it just requires some time from you. Time to learn to recognize and prepare these foods, and time to gather them. And then you can clean them in the sink basin in your home, you can cook them on an electric stove top, and you can share them with your family under electric lights. I would like to ask that you lend me some of your time so that I can share with you how the accumulated wisdom from our Aboriginal cultures, as well as the research that has been compiled, both clinical and laboratory research, how these two lines of evidence create an incredibly compelling picture about how wild foods are not just an enjoyable pastime, but are actually a critical component to our long-term health and a life that's free of chronic disease.